The frost on the attic window had grown so thick that Lily Richardson could no longer see the world outside, and she wondered if anyone in Los Alamos, New Mexico, remembered she existed at all. Her breath came out in visible puffs in the cramped space that had become her prison since the first snowfall in November, and now as January winds howled through the cracks in the wooden walls, she had almost forgotten what warmth felt like. The stepmother who had locked her away had been cruel before, but this winter of 1883 had revealed a darkness in Margaret Richardson that Lily had never imagined possible. Lily pulled the thin blanket tighter around her shoulders, her fingers trembling not just from cold, but from the weakness that had settled into her bones after months of minimal food and no human contact. She was 20 years old, though she felt ancient in this moment, aged by suffering and isolation. Through the floorboards beneath her, she could hear the sounds of life continuing without her. Margaret's sharp voice barking orders at the housemaid, the clatter of dishes, the crackling of the fire that Lily could only dream about. Her father had died in the summer, thrown from a spooked horse during a cattle drive, and with his death had gone any protection Lily might have had. The attic had once been a storage space filled with trunks of her late mother's belongings and old furniture covered in white sheets. Now those sheets served as Lily's bedding, and she had long since gone through every trunk, reading her mother's old letters by the dim light that filtered through the small window. Her mother had been gone for 10 years, taken by fever when Lily was just a girl, and her father had remarried within 2 years. Margaret had seemed kind enough at first, or perhaps Lily had been too young to see the calculation in those pale blue eyes. Margaret had wanted the ranch, wanted the land and the house, and the security that came with being Mrs. Richardson. She had tolerated Lily because she had to, because Lily's father had doted on his only child and would have noticed any mistreatment. But once he was in the ground, once the will had been read and Margaret discovered that the ranch was hers outright with only a small provision for Lily, everything had changed. The cruelty had started small. Lily's meals had been reduced, her chores increased. Then came the accusations of theft, of laziness, of disrespect. By October, Margaret had been threatening to send Lily to an asylum, claiming her stepdaughter was mad with grief. When the first snow had fallen in early November, Margaret had ordered Lily up to the attic to fetch some blankets. The moment Lily had climbed the narrow stairs, she had heard the door slam behind her, heard the scrape of the key in the lock. She had pounded on the door until her fists were bruised, had screamed until her voice was raw, but no one had come. Or rather, no one had cared. The housemaid was too frightened of Margaret to intervene, and the ranch hands never came into the main house. The first week had been the worst, filled with panic and disbelief. Lily had been sure someone would realize what had happened, sure that someone would rescue her. But as the days turned to weeks and the weeks to months, she had been forced to accept her reality. Margaret sent the housemaid up once a day with a small portion of bread and water, never enough to truly sustain, but just enough to keep Lily alive. The maid, a timid girl named Sarah, who could not have been more than 16, always looked terrified, her eyes darting back toward the stairs as if Margaret might appear at any moment. Lily tried to speak to Sarah to beg for help, but the girl would only shake her head frantically and flee. Once, Sarah had whispered, "She says she will turn me out without a reference if I help you. I have nowhere to go, miss. I am sorry." Lily could not find it in herself to blame the girl. They were both trapped in their own ways by Margaret's cruelty. The cold had become unbearable as December arrived. The attic had no stove, no fireplace, nothing to provide warmth. Lily had wrapped herself in every sheet and piece of clothing she could find in the trunks, had stuffed rags into the cracks around the window, but still the cold seeped in. Her fingers had developed chilblains, painful and itching. Her lips were cracked and bleeding. She had lost weight, could feel her ribs pressing against her skin, could see how her wrists had become as thin as bird bones. She thought often of simply giving up, of lying down and letting the cold take her. It would be easier than this endless suffering, but something stubborn in her refused to surrender. Perhaps it was her father's blood in her veins. He had been a fighter, had built his ranch from nothing, had survived the hardships of the frontier. She was his daughter, and she would not let Margaret win so easily. On the worst nights when the wind screamed and the cold was so intense she could not feel her feet, Lily would recite every poem she had ever learned, would sing every song she could remember just to remind herself that she was still alive, still human. She talked to her mother, sometimes to her father, whispering into the darkness about her fears and her hopes. She dreamed of spring, of warmth, of freedom. She dreamed of revenge too, though she was not proud of those dreams. It was late January when everything changed. Lily had lost track of the exact date, had marked the passing days by scratching lines into the wooden floorboards with a bent nail she had found. But even that had become difficult as her strength waned. She was lying on her makeshift bed, drifting in and out of consciousness, when she heard something that made her heart leap. Hoofbeats. Not the familiar sounds of the ranch horses being led to and from the barn, but the rapid thunder of a horse being ridden hard. She dragged herself to the window, pressed her face against the icy glass, and tried to see. The frost was too thick, but she could hear raised voices from below. A man's voice, deep and insistent, and Margaret's sharp tones responding. Lily's heart began to pound. Who was it? What did they want? She tried to call out, but her voice was so weak from disuse that barely a whisper emerged. The voices grew louder, angrier. She heard Margaret shriek something, heard the man's voice grow harder. Then came the sound of boots on the stairs, heavy and purposeful. Lily scrambled back from the attic door, suddenly terrified. What if Margaret had sent for someone to take her to an asylum? What if this was not rescue, but a new nightmare? The footsteps stopped outside the attic door. There was a moment of silence, then a man's voice called out, "Is someone in there?" Lily tried to answer, but her voice failed her. She coughed, tried again. "Yes," she managed, barely audible. "Please." "Step back from the door," the man commanded. His voice was not unkind, but it held an authority that made Lily obey immediately. She pressed herself into the corner farthest from the door, pulling her ragged blankets around her. What happened next was something out of Lily's fever dreams. There was a tremendous crash as something heavy hit the door. The old wood splintered but held. Another crash, and this time the door gave way, torn from its hinges. Cold air from the house below rushed in, and with it came a man. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair and a face weathered by sun and wind. He wore a heavy coat dusted with snow, and his eyes were a striking blue-gray that seemed to take in everything at once. Those eyes found Lily huddled in her corner, and she saw shock flash across his face, followed immediately by fury. "God Almighty," he breathed, crossing the attic in 3 long strides. He knelt beside her, and Lily instinctively shrank back. He froze, held up his hands to show he meant no harm. "My name is Ryder Reynolds. I am a friend of your father's. I have been away driving cattle to Kansas, and I came as soon as I returned and heard the rumors in town. I am going to help you." Lily wanted to speak to thank him, but she found she could not form the words. Her teeth were chattering too hard, and her mind felt foggy and slow. Ryder Reynolds looked at her for a long moment, and she saw something like grief cross his face. Then he was shrugging out of his heavy coat, wrapping it around her. The warmth of it, the weight, made her gasp. "Can you walk?" he asked gently. Lily tried to stand, but her legs would not hold her. She had been sitting and lying down for so long, had been so weak from hunger and cold, that her body simply refused to obey. She made a small sound of frustration and despair, and Ryder Reynolds made a decision. "Forgive me," he said softly. And then he was lifting her into his arms as easily as if she weighed nothing. Perhaps she nearly did after all these months. Lily had a brief impression of strength and warmth, of the smell of leather and horses and the outdoors, and then he was carrying her toward the broken door. Margaret was waiting at the bottom of the attic stairs, her face twisted with rage. "You have no right to take her. She is my stepdaughter, and she is mad. I have been caring for her as best I can, but she is dangerous. She attacked me." Ryder Reynolds stopped on the stairs, and when he spoke, his voice was colder than the winter wind. "Madam, I have known your husband since we were boys. I knew Lily when she was a child. I also know that you are a liar, and worse. I am taking her to the doctor, and then I am going to the sheriff. If I were you, I would start packing." Margaret's face went white, then red. "The ranch is mine. The law says so." "The law also says you cannot imprison and starve a person no matter what your relation to them might be," Ryder replied. "Now get out of my way before I forget I was raised to be respectful to women." He carried Lily down the stairs, and she caught a glimpse of Sarah the housemaid standing in the hallway, her hands pressed to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Lily tried to give her a reassuring look, but she was not sure her face was obeying her mind's commands anymore. The cold air outside hit Lily like a physical blow, and she gasped, burying her face against Ryder's chest. She felt him shift her weight, heard him speaking to someone, and then she was being lifted onto a horse settled in front of a saddle. Ryder swung up behind her, pulled her back against him, and wrapped both his coat and his arms around her. "Hold on," he murmured against her ear. "We are going to get you warm and fed and well. I promise you that." The ride into town was a blur. Lily was barely conscious, aware only of the rocking motion of the horse, the warmth of the man holding her, and the cold air on her face. She heard voices when they stopped, felt herself being carried again, and then there was blessed warmth and light. Dr. Harrison was an old man with kind eyes and gentle hands. He examined Lily while Ryder waited outside the room, and she saw the doctor's expression grow grimmer as he noted each injury, each sign of neglect. When he was done, he gave her warm broth and bread, making her eat slowly, even though she wanted to devour it all at once. "You will make yourself sick if you eat too fast after such deprivation," he told her kindly. "Slowly now. That is it." When Ryder was allowed back into the room, the doctor spoke to him in a low voice, but Lily could still hear. "She will recover, but it will take time. She is severely malnourished. She has frostbite on her fingers and toes, though I believe we caught it before permanent damage was done, and she is weak as a kitten. She needs rest, warmth, and regular meals. Most of all, she needs to be somewhere she feels safe." "She will stay with me," Ryder said immediately. "I have a good house on my ranch, and my housekeeper is a kind woman who will care for her." The doctor raised his eyebrows. "That may cause talk, Reynolds. You are an unmarried man." "Then people can talk," Ryder said flatly. "I am not leaving her anywhere that woman can get to her. The sheriff is already riding out to the Richardson place to arrest Margaret for false imprisonment and attempted murder. Lily is staying with me until she is well enough to decide what she wants to do." Lily found her voice at last, though it was barely a whisper. "Thank you." Both men turned to look at her, and Ryder's expression softened. He came to her bedside, pulled up a chair, and sat down. "You do not need to thank me. I only wish I had come sooner. I did not know, Lily. I swear I did not know what she was doing to you." "How did you find out?" Lily asked. Her throat hurt from disuse, and each word was an effort. Ryder's jaw tightened. "I came back from the cattle drive 2 days ago. I went to the general store for supplies, and Mrs. Chen mentioned that she had not seen you since before your father died. She said it was strange, that she had asked Margaret about you and been told you were visiting relations in Santa Fe, but Mrs. Chen said she did not believe it. Said Margaret had a cruel look about her. Then Tom Baker, who works at the livery, mentioned he had seen Sarah the housemaid in town, and the girl had looked terrified. When he asked if everything was all right at the Richardson place, she had burst into tears and run away. I got a bad feeling, so I rode out to your ranch. When I got there, Margaret tried to turn me away, but I pushed past her. I searched the house, heard a sound from above, and found that locked attic door. You broke it down, Lily said, remembering the tremendous crashes. I would have torn the whole damned house apart to find you, Ryder said, and there was something in his eyes that made Lily's breath catch. It was not just anger or pity, it was something deeper, more personal. She studied him more carefully now that she was in the light and her mind was clearing. Ryder Reynolds. She remembered him vaguely from her childhood, a young man who had worked on her father's ranch before buying his own land. He had to be about 10 years older than her, perhaps 30 or so. He had always been kind to her when she was a girl, she recalled, had taught her to braid a lasso once, had lifted her onto his horse and let her ride around the corral. She had not seen him in years, not since he had started his own ranch on the eastern edge of the county. "I remember you," she said softly. "You taught me to rope a fence post." A smile flickered across Ryder's face, though it did not quite reach his eyes. "You were a quick learner. Your father was so proud of you." At the mention of her father, Lily felt tears well up. She had not allowed herself to cry during her imprisonment, had held all her grief and fear inside because she had been afraid that if she started, she would never stop. But now, in the warmth and safety of the doctor's office, with this man who had saved her looking at her with such compassion, the dam broke. She began to sob. Great, wrenching gasps that hurt her chest and made her whole body shake. Ryder Reynolds did not tell her to stop crying or to be strong. He simply moved from the chair to sit on the edge of the bed, and he gathered her carefully into his arms and let her weep against his shoulder. One of his hands came up to stroke her hair, and he murmured soft, soothing words that she could not quite make out, but that comforted her nonetheless. Dr. Harrison quietly left the room, giving them privacy. Lily cried until she had no tears left, and then she simply lay against Ryder's chest, exhausted and empty, but somehow feeling lighter than she had in months. When she finally pulled back, she saw that his shirt was damp with her tears. "I am sorry," she whispered. "Never apologize for crying," Ryder said firmly. "You have earned every tear and more. You are the strongest woman I have ever met, Lily Richardson. You survived something that would have broken most people." Lily did not feel strong. She felt fragile as glass, as if one wrong word or touch might shatter her. But something in Ryder's voice, in the way he looked at her, made her want to be as strong as he seemed to think she was. The doctor returned after a while and insisted that Lily stay in the small infirmary room behind his office for the night, so he could monitor her condition. Ryder agreed reluctantly, but he did not leave. He pulled the chair close to her bedside and settled in, and when Lily's eyes began to droop with exhaustion, she heard him say, "I will be right here. You are safe now, I promise." She fell asleep believing him, and for the first time in months, she did not have nightmares. When Lily woke the next morning, pale sunlight was streaming through the window, and Ryder Reynolds was still there, asleep in the chair with his head tilted back against the wall, and his long legs stretched out in front of him. He looked uncomfortable, and Lily felt a rush of guilt that he had spent the night like that for her sake. She took the opportunity to study him more carefully. He was handsome in a rugged way, with strong features and a jaw dark with stubble. There were lines at the corners of his eyes, probably from squinting into the sun during long days of ranch work. His hands, resting on his thighs, were calloused and scarred, the hands of a man who knew hard labor. But there was also a gentleness to his mouth, a softness that suggested he was not as hard as his appearance might indicate. As if sensing her gaze, Ryder's eyes opened. For a moment he looked disoriented. Then his gaze focused on her, and he sat up straight, wincing as his back protested. "Good morning," he said, his voice rough with sleep. "How are you feeling?" "Better," Lily said, and it was true. The warmth and the food and the sleep had helped more than she could have imagined. She was still weak, still ached in 100 places, but the fog in her mind had lifted. "You did not have to stay." "Yes, I did," Ryder said simply. He stood, stretched, and Lily saw him wince again. "Let me get the doctor." Dr. Harrison was pleased with Lily's progress. He changed the bandages on her frostbitten fingers and toes, gave her more broth and soft bread, and then declared that she could leave his care as long as she promised to rest and eat regularly. "I will make sure of it," Ryder said. He had stepped out briefly and returned with a bundle of clothes. "Mrs. Chen from the general store sent these. She said she guessed at your size, and if they do not fit, you can come by the store when you are feeling better, and she will find something else." The clothes were simple but clean. A warm wool dress in deep blue, a petticoat, stockings, and a shawl. Mrs. Chen had even included a hairbrush and some ribbons. Lily felt tears threaten again at the kindness of this woman she barely knew. With the doctor's help, for she was still too weak to manage alone, Lily dressed in the new clothes. The dress hung loose on her thin frame, but it was clean and warm and felt like a luxury after months in the same ragged garments. She brushed her hair, which had grown long and tangled, and managed to plait it into a simple braid. When she emerged from behind the screen where she had dressed, Ryder looked at her, and something flashed in his eyes. "You look lovely," he said, and there was a sincerity in his voice that made Lily blush. "I look like a scarecrow," she said, but she smiled a little as she said it. "You look alive," Ryder corrected. "That is all that matters." The ride to Ryder's ranch took about an hour. Lily rode in front of him again, wrapped in his coat and a thick blanket the doctor had provided. She was stronger today, more aware of her surroundings. The landscape was beautiful in a stark way. The red earth dusted with snow. The mountains in the distance purple against the pale blue sky. It was so different from the dark, cramped attic that had been her world for so long. Ryder's ranch, which he told her was called the Double R, was smaller than her father's had been but well maintained. The house was a solid adobe structure with a covered porch and real glass windows. Smoke rose from the chimney, promising warmth inside. There were several outbuildings, a barn, and a corral where a dozen horses milled about. As Ryder helped Lily down from his horse, the door to the house opened and a woman emerged. She was perhaps 50, with iron-gray hair pulled back in a neat bun and a face that was stern until she smiled. When she saw Lily, her expression softened into one of immediate sympathy. "This must be the young lady," she said, coming down the porch steps. "Poor child, come inside at once. I have soup on the stove and a fire going in the guest room." "Lily, this is Mrs. Alice Porter, my housekeeper," Ryder said. "Alice, this is Lily Richardson." "I knew your mother," Mrs. Porter said as she ushered Lily inside. "She was a lovely woman. I am so sorry for all you have been through, dear." The interior of the house was warm and welcoming. The main room had a large fireplace with a fire crackling merrily, comfortable-looking furniture, and colorful woven rugs on the wooden floor. Mrs. Porter led Lily down a hallway to a bedroom that was small but charming, with a real bed covered in quilts, a dresser, and another fireplace that was already lit. "You rest here as long as you need," Mrs. Porter said. "I will bring you some soup in just a moment." When she left, Lily sank down onto the bed and almost wept again at the softness of it. She had not slept in a real bed since November. Ryder appeared in the doorway, looking uncertain. "Is the room all right?" he asked. "It is perfect," Lily said. "Ryder, I do not know how to thank you for all this. You have given me so much, and I have nothing to repay you with." Ryder shook his head. "You do not owe me anything, Lily. Your father was a good friend to me when I was starting out. He lent me the money to buy my first herd when no one else would. He believed in me. The least I can do is look after his daughter." He paused, then added quietly, "Besides, I would have done it anyway. What Margaret did to you was evil. No one deserves that." Over the following weeks, Lily slowly began to heal. Mrs. Porter fed her regular meals, starting with simple soups and broths and gradually adding more substantial food as Lily's stomach adjusted. The frostbite on her fingers and toes healed without permanent damage, though they remained sensitive to cold. She gained back some of the weight she had lost, and color returned to her cheeks. Most importantly, she began to feel like herself again, to remember who she had been before the attic. Ryder was unfailingly kind and respectful. He checked on her each day, asking how she was feeling, if she needed anything. He brought her books from his small library, and they discovered a shared love of poetry. Sometimes in the evenings he would sit with her in the parlor, and they would read aloud to each other while Mrs. Porter knitted by the fire. Lily learned about Ryder's life during those evenings. He had grown up poor, the son of a drifter who had died young and a mother who had done laundry to keep them fed. He had started working on ranches when he was just a boy, had saved every penny, and had finally been able to buy his own land when he was 25. Her father had indeed helped him, lending him money for his first cattle. Ryder had paid him back within 3 years, and the two men had remained friends until her father's death. "I was in Kansas when he died," Ryder said one evening, his voice heavy with regret. "I did not hear about it until weeks later. By the time I got back, the funeral was long over and you were already living with Margaret. I should have checked on you sooner. I should have realized something was wrong." "You could not have known," Lily said softly. "Margaret was careful. She made sure no one from town saw me after she locked me away. She told everyone I had gone to stay with relatives." "I still should have checked," Ryder said. He looked at her, and there was something intense in his gaze that made Lily's heart beat faster. "I will not make that mistake again. I will not let anyone hurt you." There was a promise in those words that went beyond simple protection, and Lily felt something shift between them. She had been so focused on healing, on simply surviving each day, that she had not allowed herself to think about what she was feeling for Ryder Reynolds. But now, sitting in the warm parlor with the firelight dancing on his face, she could no longer deny it. She was falling in love with him. The realization should have frightened her. She had been through so much, and her heart felt as fragile as the rest of her. But instead of fear, she felt a tentative hope. Ryder was good and kind and strong. He had saved her life, and he was helping her rebuild it. Was it so surprising that she would come to care for him? But did he feel the same way? He was attentive and protective, but that could simply be his nature, his sense of duty to her father. Lily did not know how to read the looks he gave her, the way his hand would linger when he helped her up from a chair, the softness in his voice when he spoke her name. February brought more snow and bitter cold, but Lily was safe and warm in Ryder's house. She began to help Mrs. Porter with small tasks, needing to feel useful again. She mended clothes and helped with cooking and tried to repay some of the kindness she had been shown. Mrs. Porter protested at first, saying Lily needed to rest, but Lily insisted. "I am going mad with boredom," she said with a laugh. "Please let me help. It makes me feel like a person again, not just an invalid." So Mrs. Porter allowed her to help, though she made sure Lily did not overexert herself. The two women grew close, and Lily found herself confiding in the older woman about her fears and hopes. "I do not know what to do with my life now," Lily admitted one afternoon as they kneaded bread dough together. "The ranch is legally Margaret's. Even if she goes to prison for what she did to me, I have no claim to it. I have no money, no property. I do not even know if I want to go back there after everything that happened." "You could stay here," Mrs. Porter said, giving Lily a significant look. "Ryder certainly seems to want you to." Lily felt her cheeks heat. "He is just being kind." Mrs. Porter laughed. "Child, I have worked for Ryder Reynolds for 5 years. I have seen him with many people, men and women both. I have never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. That is not just kindness." "But I have nothing to offer him," Lily said. "I am penniless. I am damaged. What could he possibly want with me?" Mrs. Porter stopped kneading and looked at Lily seriously. "You are not damaged, Lily Richardson. You are strong and brave and kind despite everything you have been through. Any man would be lucky to have you. And I think Ryder knows that. The question is, do you care for him?" Lily bit her lip, then nodded slowly. "I think I do, but is it real, or is it just gratitude? He saved my life. How can I know what I truly feel?" "Give it time," Mrs. Porter advised. "You are still healing. Your feelings will become clearer as you grow stronger. And if they do not change, If you still care for him in a month or two, then you will know it is real." Lily took that advice to heart. She focused on getting stronger, on regaining her health and her sense of self. As February turned to March, the weather began to warm slightly. Snow still fell, but there were occasional days of sunshine that hinted at the spring to come. On one such day, Ryder asked Lily if she felt strong enough to go for a walk around the ranch with him. "I would love that," Lily said, eager to be outside, to see more of the world beyond the house. She bundled up in warm clothes, including a coat that Mrs. Porter had altered to fit her, and stepped out into the bright sunshine. The air was cold but fresh, and Lily took deep breaths of it, feeling more alive than she had in months. Ryder showed her around the ranch, pointing out the different buildings and introducing her to the ranch hands, who were all respectful and kind. He showed her the barn where the horses were kept, and Lily was delighted to see a mare with a new foal. "She was born just last week," Ryder said, watching as Lily reached out to stroke the foal's soft nose. "Would you like to name her?" Lily looked at him in surprise. "Really?" "Really," Ryder said, smiling. "I think you should have that honor." Lily thought for a moment, then said, "Hope, I want to name her Hope." Ryder's smile widened. "That is a perfect name." They continued their walk, and Ryder showed Lily his favorite spot on the ranch, a small rise that overlooked the valley. The view was breathtaking, with the mountains in the distance and the ranch spread out below. They stood there for a while in companionable silence, and then Ryder spoke. "Lily, I need to tell you something." Lily's heart began to pound. There was something in his voice, a seriousness that made her both nervous and hopeful. "What is it?" Ryder turned to face her, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. "I have been trying to figure out the right way to say this, but I do not think there is a right way. I just need to be honest with you." He took a deep breath. "I care about you, Lily. More than I should, probably, given everything you have been through. I know you are still healing, and I do not want to pressure you or make you uncomfortable, but I cannot keep pretending that I see you as just a friend or someone I'm helping out of duty. When I saw you in that attic, so frail and frightened, something in me broke. And watching you heal, watching you become stronger and smile again, has been the greatest privilege of my life. I am in love with you, Lily Richardson. I have been falling in love with you since the day I carried you out of that attic, and maybe even before that, in some way I did not recognize." Lily stared at him, her heart racing so fast she thought it might burst from her chest. "Ryder," she whispered. "You do not have to say anything," Ryder said quickly. "I just needed you to know. Whatever you decide, wherever you want to go from here, I will support you. If you want to leave, if you want to start fresh somewhere else, I will help you. If you want to stay here as just a friend, I will accept that. But I could not keep silent anymore. You deserve to know the truth." Lily felt tears well up, but they were not tears of sadness. "I was so afraid you only saw me as a duty," she said, her voice shaking. "I was afraid that my feelings were one-sided, that you were just being kind because of my father. Your father was a good man, but that is not why I'm doing this," Ryder said. He reached out tentatively and took her hand, his touch gentle. "I am doing this because of you, because you are brave and strong and beautiful, and because I cannot imagine my life without you in it now." "I love you too," Lily said, the words tumbling out in a rush. "I have been trying to tell myself it was just gratitude, that I was confused because you saved me. But it is not that. It is you. The way you read poetry with such passion, the way you are kind to your animals and your workers, the way you have been so patient with me while I heal. I love you, Ryder Reynolds." The smile that broke across Ryder's face was like the sun coming out from behind clouds. He pulled her into his arms, and Lily went willingly, resting her head against his chest and feeling his heart beating as fast as hers. They stood like that for a long moment, holding each other in the cold March sunshine, and Lily felt a peace she had not known since before her father died. When Ryder finally pulled back, it was only far enough to look down at her face. "May I kiss you?" he asked softly. Lily nodded, suddenly shy, but wanting this more than she had wanted anything in a long time. Ryder lowered his head slowly, giving her time to change her mind, but she did not. When his lips met hers, it was gentle and sweet, a kiss full of promise and hope. Lily's eyes closed and she kissed him back, feeling warmth flood through her that had nothing to do with the sunshine. When they finally broke apart, both of them were smiling. Ryder touched her face gently, his thumb brushing over her cheek. "I promise you, Lily, I will spend the rest of my life making sure you are happy and safe. You will never suffer like that again. I will protect you with everything I have." "I know," Lily said, and she did. She trusted Ryder in a way she had not trusted anyone since her father died. "But I do not want to be just someone you protect. I want to be your partner. I want to be strong enough to stand beside you, not just behind you." "You are already strong enough," Ryder said. "You have always been strong enough, and I would be honored to have you as my partner in all things." Over the next few weeks, Lily and Ryder's relationship deepened. They spent every free moment together, talking and laughing and learning about each other. Ryder courted her properly, bringing her wildflowers that he found on his rides, reading her favorite poems aloud in the evenings, teaching her to ride again on a gentle mare named Daisy. Lily felt herself blooming under his attention, felt the last shadows of her imprisonment fading away. News came from town that Margaret had indeed been arrested and was awaiting trial. The housemaid Sarah had testified against her, describing in detail how Margaret had kept Lily locked in the attic for months. Other townspeople had come forward with stories of Margaret's cruelty and greed. It seemed likely that she would spend years in prison for what she had done. As for the ranch, it turned out that Lily did have some legal recourse after all. Her father's will had included a provision that if Margaret ever mistreated Lily, the property would revert to Lily's ownership. With the testimony about the imprisonment, a judge ruled that Margaret had indeed violated that provision. The ranch was Lily's. When Lily heard the news, she did not know how to feel. Part of her was relieved that justice had been served, that the land her father had built was hers again. But another part of her had no desire to ever set foot in that house again, to live with the memories of what had happened there. She discussed it with Ryder one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. "I do not know if I can go back there," she admitted. "Every time I think about that house, I see that attic door, and I remember how helpless I felt." "Then do not go back," Ryder said simply. "Sell the ranch if you do not want it, or keep it and hire a foreman to run it. You have choices now, Lily. You're not trapped anymore." "What if I wanted to sell it to you?" Lily asked. "You could expand the double R, run both ranches together." Ryder looked at her carefully. "Is that what you want? Because I would never want you to feel pressured. Your father worked hard for that land. I will not take it from you." "You would not be taking it," Lily said. "I would be giving it to you, or rather, selling it to you for a fair price so everything is legal and proper. But Ryder, I do not want that land for myself. I want to build something new, something that is ours together. If we combined the ranches, we would have one of the largest operations in the county. We could make something wonderful." "We?" Ryder repeated, and there was something hopeful in his voice. "Are you saying what I think you are saying?" Lily took a deep breath, gathering her courage. "I am saying that I want a future with you. I am saying that I love you and I want to be with you. I am saying that if you asked me to marry you, I would say yes." For a moment, Ryder just stared at her. Then he was on his feet, pulling her up with him. "Lily Richardson, will you marry me? Will you be my wife and my partner and the love of my life?" "Yes," Lily said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, 1,000 times, yes." Ryder swept her up in his arms and spun her around, both of them laughing like children. When he set her down, he kissed her deeply, and Lily felt like her heart might burst from happiness. This was what she had dreamed of during those long, dark months in the attic, love and warmth and hope, and now she had it, had all of it and more. They were married in April in a small ceremony in the church in Los Alamos. Mrs. Porter stood as Lily's witness, and one of Ryder's ranch hands stood as his. The judge who had ruled in Lily's favor regarding the ranch performed the ceremony, and what seemed like the entire town turned out to celebrate with them. People brought food and gifts, and there was music and dancing in the church hall afterward. Mrs. Chen from the general store gave Lily a beautiful shawl she had knitted herself. Sarah, the former housemaid, who Lily had hired to work in the house on the combined ranch, gave them a set of embroidered pillowcases. Dr. Harrison gave them a medical kit and made them promise to be careful. Even people Lily barely knew came up to congratulate her and tell her how glad they were that she had survived and was happy now. As Lily danced with her new husband, she looked around at all the smiling faces and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. She had been so close to losing everything, had spent months believing she would die alone and forgotten in that cold attic, but she had survived, and now she had more than she had ever dreamed possible. She had a husband who loved her, friends who cared about her, and a future that was bright with possibility. "What are you thinking?" Ryder asked, pulling her closer as they swayed to the music. "I am thinking about how lucky I am," Lily said. "How lucky I am that you came looking for me, that you saved me, that you love me." "I am the lucky one," Ryder said. "You have given me everything I ever wanted, Lily. A home, a family, a future. I will spend every day trying to deserve you." "You already deserve me," Lily said. "You deserve all the happiness in the world, Ryder Reynolds." They moved the household to Ryder's ranch, the Double R, because Lily still could not bring herself to live in the house where she had been imprisoned. Ryder hired a foreman to manage the day-to-day operations of Lily's former ranch, and the two properties were run as one large operation. It was hard work, but it was fulfilling. Lily discovered that she had a head for business, could keep books and manage accounts with ease. Ryder respected her opinions, and they made decisions together, truly partners in every sense of the word. Mrs. Porter stayed on as their housekeeper, and Sarah came to help her. The two women got along well, and the house was always full of warmth and laughter. Lily made sure Sarah was paid well and treated with respect, determined that no one in her household would ever know the fear and powerlessness she herself had experienced. The first year of their marriage was full of joy and discovery. Lily continued to heal, both physically and emotionally. There were still moments when she would wake from a nightmare, remembering the cold and the dark and the fear. But Ryder was always there to hold her, to remind her that she was safe, that she would never be alone or trapped again. Gradually, the nightmares became less frequent. They worked hard on the ranch, expanding the herds and improving the land. Ryder taught Lily to ride better, to rope cattle, to read the weather and the land the way he did. Lily taught Ryder to appreciate poetry and music, to see the beauty in small things. They challenged each other and supported each other, and their love grew deeper with each passing day. In the summer, they took a trip to Santa Fe, and Lily saw the city for the first time. She was awed by the old churches and the bustling markets, by the mix of cultures and languages. Ryder bought her a silver necklace from a native craftsman, a delicate chain with a small turquoise stone, and Lily wore it every day. They ate wonderful food and stayed in a nice hotel and walked through the streets, hand in hand, like any other young couple in love. It was on that trip that Lily realized she might be pregnant. Her monthly cycle had stopped, and she had been feeling tired and slightly ill in the mornings. She was both thrilled and terrified at the prospect. She and Ryder had talked about wanting children, but she had not expected it to happen so soon. She told him one evening as they sat on the balcony of their hotel room, watching the sun set over the city. "Ryder, I think I'm going to have a baby." For a moment, Ryder just looked at her, his expression unreadable. Then a huge grin spread across his face. "Truly?" "I think so," Lily said. "I'm not certain, but all the signs are there." Ryder pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. "A baby," he said wonderingly. "Lily, we are going to have a baby." "Are you happy?" Lily asked, needing to hear him say it. "Happy? Ryder pulled back to look at her, and his eyes were shining with tears. "I am beyond happy. I am over the moon. You have given me everything, Lily. Everything." When they returned to the ranch, Dr. Harrison confirmed that Lily was indeed pregnant. He calculated that the baby would be born in late winter, around February. Lily was both excited and nervous. She had lost her own mother so young, and she had no female relatives to guide her through this. But Mrs. Porter stepped in, offering advice and reassurance, and Lily felt blessed once again by the kindness of the people around her. As her pregnancy progressed, Lily found that she loved the changes in her body, loved feeling the baby move, and knowing that she was creating a new life. Ryder was attentive and doting, always making sure she was comfortable, bringing her anything she wanted, talking to her belly and telling the baby stories. It was sweet and endearing, and Lily fell in love with him all over again, watching him prepare to be a father. There were moments of fear, too. As winter approached and the weather grew cold, Lily sometimes felt panic rise in her chest, remembering the last winter and the cold of the attic. But Ryder and Mrs. Porter were always there to reassure her. The house was warm and cozy, the fire always burning. She was safe. She was loved. Nothing bad would happen to her or her baby. The baby came in late February on a cold but sunny day. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Lily was sure she could not go on, but Dr. Harrison was there, and Mrs. Porter, and most importantly Ryder, who held her hand and whispered encouragements and refused to leave her side no matter how much the doctor protested that childbirth was no place for a husband. "I am staying," Ryder said firmly. "Lily is not going through this alone." And she did not. She had Ryder's hand to grip, his voice to anchor her, his love to give her strength. And finally, after hours of labor, their son was born. He came into the world crying lustily, a healthy baby boy with a shock of dark hair and his father's blue-gray eyes. Lily wept when the doctor placed him in her arms. She had never felt anything like this before, a love so fierce and immediate that it took her breath away. This was her son, hers and Ryder's. A new life, a new beginning, a symbol of everything they had overcome and everything they had built together. "He is perfect," Ryder said. His voice choked with emotion. He was sitting on the edge of the bed, one arm around Lily and one hand gently touching the baby's tiny fingers. "What should we name him?" Lily had been thinking about this for months. "I want to name him after my father," she said. "His name was Lawrence. We could call the baby Lawrence, or maybe use it as a middle name." "Lawrence," Ryder repeated, testing it out. "Lawrence Reynolds. That is a strong name." He looked at Lily. "But I think he should have his own first name, something that is just his. What about Robert Lawrence Reynolds?" "Robert," Lily said, smiling. "I like that. Robert Lawrence Reynolds. Welcome to the world, little Robert." The baby seemed to approve, settling down in his mother's arms and gazing up at her with unfocused eyes. Lily felt her heart swell with so much love she thought it might break. This was her family, this tiny boy, this wonderful man, this life they had built together. She had been through darkness and despair, had come so close to losing everything, but she had survived. And now she had more than she had ever dared to hope for. Over the next few months, Lily and Ryder adjusted to life with a baby. It was exhausting and wonderful in equal measure. Robert was a good baby, healthy and happy, but he still required constant care. Lily nursed him and changed him and rocked him when he cried. Ryder helped whenever he could, walking the baby around the house in the middle of the night when Lily was too tired, changing diapers without complaint, singing off-key lullabies that made Lily laugh. Mrs. Porter and Sarah helped too, and the house was full of the sounds of a baby, crying and cooing and eventually laughing. Lily had never been happier. Yes, she was tired, and yes, there were moments when she felt overwhelmed, but this was the life she had dreamed of during those dark months in the attic. This was love and family and home. As Robert grew, he became more of his own person. He had Ryder's smile and Lily's green eyes, a perfect combination of both his parents. He was curious and active, always wanting to explore and learn. By the time he was a year old, he was walking and getting into everything, and Lily and Ryder had to be constantly vigilant to keep him out of trouble. The ranch continued to prosper. Word had spread about the quality of the cattle they raised, and they had buyers coming from as far as Denver and Kansas City. Ryder hired more hands, and they built a new barn and improved the corral. Lily kept the books and managed the household, and together they made decisions about the future of the ranch. They talked about having more children, and Lily found herself pregnant again when Robert was 2 years old. This pregnancy was easier than the first, and when the baby came in the autumn, it was a daughter. She had Lily's blonde hair and Ryder's strong features, and they named her Rose Margaret Reynolds, honoring both Lily's mother and moving forward with a new generation. Despite the choice of Margaret as a middle name, it was not in honor of the stepmother who had hurt Lily. Rather, it was Lily's way of reclaiming the name, of refusing to let that woman's cruelty define her life. Rose would grow up loved and cherished, and the name would mean something good in their family. As the years passed, Lily and Ryder built a life that was full and rich. They had 4 children in total: Robert, Rose, and then twins, a boy and a girl they named Richard and Lila. The house was always full of noise and laughter, of children running and playing and learning. Lily taught them to read and write, to appreciate music and art. Ryder taught them to ride and rope, to respect the land and the animals, to work hard and be honest. The children grew up hearing the story of how their parents had met, though Lily and Ryder kept some of the darker details to themselves until the children were older. They wanted their children to know about resilience and love, about how their mother had survived something terrible, and how their father had been brave enough to save her. It was a story of hope, and it was their story. Lily never forgot what she had endured, but as the years went by, the memories lost some of their power to hurt her. She had moved beyond being a victim and had become a survivor, and then simply a woman living her life. She was Ryder's wife, her children's mother, a rancher, and a businesswoman. She was happy. Sometimes on cold winter nights, when the wind howled around the house, Lily would remember the attic. She would remember the cold and the fear and the loneliness. But then she would look around at her warm house, at her husband asleep beside her, at the sounds of her children breathing in the rooms down the hall, and she would feel nothing but gratitude. She had survived. She had more than survived. She had thrived. Ryder noticed those moments when the memories would touch her. He always seemed to sense when she was thinking about the past. He would pull her close, wrap his arms around her, and remind her without words that she was safe, that she was loved, that she would never be alone or cold or afraid again. "I love you," he would whisper into her hair. "I love you too," she would whisper back. And it was enough. It was everything. As the children grew older, they began to take on more responsibilities on the ranch. Robert, the eldest, showed a natural talent for working with horses and often helped his father with training the new colts. Rose had her mother's head for numbers and started helping Lily with the books when she was just 12. The twins were still young, but they were eager and energetic, always underfoot and always wanting to help. The ranch continued to grow and prosper. They expanded their operations, bought more land, increased their herds. They became one of the most successful ranches in the territory, known for the quality of their livestock and the fairness with which they treated their workers. Lily and Ryder made sure that everyone who worked for them was paid well and housed comfortably. They remembered what it was like to struggle, and they were determined to be good employers. Lily also became involved in the community. She helped establish a school in Los Alamos so that all the children in the area could get an education, not just those whose families could afford private tutors. She worked with other women in town to create a charity that helped families in need, providing food and clothing and sometimes temporary housing. She used her own experiences to fuel her compassion, and she became known as someone who would help anyone who needed it. Ryder supported her in all of this, proud of the woman his wife had become. He would often tell her that she was the strongest person he knew, and Lily would smile and remind him that he was the one who had given her the chance to be strong. One day when Lily was in her late 30s, she received word that Margaret had died in prison. She had been serving a 20-year sentence for what she had done to Lily, and she had made it about 12 years before illness took her. Lily felt a complicated mix of emotions when she heard the news. She could not say she was sorry Margaret was dead, but she also could not find it in herself to be glad. Margaret had been a deeply unhappy and cruel woman, and she had died alone and unmourned. In a way, that was its own punishment. "How do you feel?" Ryder asked when Lily told him the news. Lily thought about it for a long moment. "I feel free," she finally said. "I know she has been in prison for years, so it should not make a difference, but knowing she is truly gone, that she can never hurt anyone ever again, makes me feel like I can finally close that chapter of my life completely." Ryder pulled her into his arms. "You have been free for a long time, my love. But I'm glad if this gives you peace." And it did. Lily felt like a weight she had not even realized she was carrying had been lifted from her shoulders. She could finally let go of the last vestiges of anger and fear. She could move forward without any shadows from the past. As their children grew into young adults, Lily and Ryder began to think about the future of the ranch. Robert, now a young man of 21, was clearly going to take over the operation someday. He had his father's skill with cattle and his mother's business sense. Rose, at 19, had announced that she wanted to become a teacher and had gone to Santa Fe to attend the new teachers' college there. The twins, Richard and Lila, were 16 and still figuring out what they wanted to do with their lives. Lily and Ryder were immensely proud of all their children. They had raised them to be kind and hardworking, to value education and integrity, to treat everyone with respect regardless of their station in life. Watching them become adults was bittersweet, a reminder that time was passing and their children would soon have lives of their own. But Lily and Ryder still had many years ahead of them. They were still young enough to enjoy life, to work the ranch together, to spend evenings on the porch watching the sunset and talking about their day. They still read poetry to each other, still danced in the kitchen when they thought no one was watching, still laughed and loved and built their life together. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Ryder took Lily back to the spot where he had first told her he loved her, the small rise overlooking the valley. It was a warm spring day, and the valley was green and beautiful, dotted with wildflowers and grazing cattle. "Do you remember the first time we stood here?" Ryder asked, holding Lily's hand. "Of course I do," Lily said, smiling. "You told me you loved me, and I thought my heart was going to burst." "I meant every word I said that day," Ryder told her, "and I mean them even more now. You have given me 20 years of happiness, Lily. You have given me a family and a home and a life beyond anything I ever dreamed possible. I love you more today than I did on the day we married, and I will love you more tomorrow than I do today." Lily felt tears well up, but they were happy tears. "You saved my life, Ryder. Not just that day when you broke down the attic door, but every day since. You have shown me what love is supposed to be. You have given me a life worth living. I love you with everything I am." They stood there holding each other, two people who had been through so much and had come out the other side stronger and more in love than ever. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose, and Lily thought about how far she had come, from the cold, dark attic to this beautiful moment, from despair to joy, from death to life. It had not been easy, but it had been worth it. Every moment of struggle had been worth it to get to this place, this life, this love. As the years continued to pass, Lily and Ryder watched their children marry and start families of their own. Robert married a sweet young woman named Emma, and they took over the day-to-day running of the ranch. Rose came back from Santa Fe with a teaching certificate and a husband, a lawyer named Thomas, who opened a practice in Los Alamos. Richard decided to become a veterinarian and went away to school in Denver. Lila, the youngest, fell in love with art and music and eventually moved to Santa Fe to pursue her passions. Lily and Ryder became grandparents, and they delighted in spoiling their grandchildren the way grandparents do. The house was often full of little ones running around, and Lily would watch Ryder playing with them and feel her heart swell with love. He was just as wonderful a grandfather as he had been a father. As they entered their 50s, Lily and Ryder began to slow down a bit. They were still active and involved in the ranch, but they let Robert and Emma handle more of the work. They spent their time enjoying each other's company, traveling occasionally, and being with their family. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset as they had done thousands of times before, Lily turned to Ryder and said, "We have had a good life, haven't we?" "The best life," Ryder agreed. He took her hand, his thumb rubbing over her knuckles in a familiar, comforting gesture. "I would not change a single moment of it." "Not even the hard parts?" Lily asked. "Not even the attic and everything that came with it?" Ryder thought about it seriously. "Not even that," he finally said, "because that is what brought us together. If none of that had happened, I might never have realized how much I loved you. We might never have had this life. So no, I would not change it. All of it, the good and the bad, led us here. And here is exactly where I want to be." Lily leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling the same contentment she always felt when she was with him. "I feel the same way. I would not trade this life for anything." They sat there in comfortable silence as the sun dipped below the horizon and the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. The air was warm, and somewhere in the distance they could hear the lowing of cattle and the whinny of horses. It was the sound of home, of the life they had built together. Inside the house, they could hear the sounds of their family, Robert and Emma talking about ranch business, the grandchildren playing, Mrs. Porter, now quite elderly but still insisting on working, clattering dishes in the kitchen. It was the sound of love and life and continuity. Lily thought about the girl she had been, locked in that cold attic, believing she was going to die. She thought about how Ryder had broken down that door and carried her to safety. How he had given her not just her life back, but a whole new life, better than anything she had imagined. She thought about the years of love and laughter, of children and grandchildren, of building something good and strong together. She had been given a second chance, and she had made the most of it. She had loved and been loved. She had raised a family and built a legacy. She had survived and thrived and found happiness beyond measure. As the stars came out above them, Ryder pulled Lily closer, and she rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. It was the same heart that had been brave enough to save her, strong enough to love her, constant enough to stay with her through everything life had thrown at them. "Thank you," Lily whispered. "For what?" Ryder asked. "For everything," Lily said. "For saving me, for loving me, for giving me this beautiful life, for being you." Ryder kissed the top of her head. "Thank you for letting me love you, for choosing me, for building this life with me. You have made me the happiest man alive, Lily Reynolds." They stayed on the porch until the stars filled the entire sky, holding each other and remembering all the years behind them and looking forward to all the years still to come. They had weathered storms and celebrated triumphs. They had raised children and built an empire. They had loved each other through everything, and that love had only grown stronger with time. When they finally went inside, it was late, and the house was quiet. The children and grandchildren had gone home, and Mrs. Porter had retired to her room. Lily and Ryder walked hand in hand to their bedroom, the same room where Lily had first stayed when Ryder had brought her to his ranch all those years ago. As they got ready for bed, moving around each other with the ease of long familiarity, Lily caught sight of herself in the mirror. She was 51 years old now, her blonde hair streaked with silver, lines around her eyes and mouth. But she was healthy and strong, and when she smiled at her reflection, she saw a happy woman looking back at her. Ryder came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist, and rested his chin on her shoulder. "You are as beautiful now as you were the day I married you," he said. Lily laughed. "You are a terrible liar, but I love you for it." "I am not lying," Ryder insisted. "You are beautiful, more beautiful, because I can see all the life we have lived together in your face. Every smile line, every gray hair, they are all proof of the years we have had and the love we have shared." Lily turned in his arms and kissed him. "I love you, Ryder Reynolds. I will love you until the day I die and beyond. And I love you, Lily Reynolds, forever and always." They climbed into bed, and Lily curled up against Ryder's side, her head on his shoulder and his arm around her. It was how they slept every night, had slept for 20 years, and Lily hoped they would sleep this way for 20 more, for 40 more, for as long as they both lived. As she drifted off to sleep warm and safe and loved, Lily thought one last time about that cold attic, about the girl who had been locked away and left to die. She thought about how that girl had survived, had been saved by a man who loved her enough to break down doors for her, who had carried her not just out of that attic but into a whole new life. That girl was gone now, replaced by a woman who was strong and happy and loved. But Lily would never forget her, would never forget what she had endured and overcome, because that experience, terrible as it was, had shaped her into the woman she was today. It had taught her resilience and strength. It had shown her the depths of human cruelty, but also the heights of human kindness and love. And in the end, the love had won. The love had always been stronger than the cruelty, the hope stronger than the despair, the light stronger than the darkness. Lily Richardson Reynolds had been locked in an attic all winter, left to die in the cold and dark. But a cowboy had broken down the door and carried her down, carried her into the light and warmth and love. And from that rescue had come this beautiful life, this love story that would be told to their grandchildren and great-grandchildren for generations to come. It was a story of survival and resilience, of courage and hope. But most of all, it was a story of love. And love, Lily knew as she finally fell asleep in her husband's arms, love was always worth fighting for. Love was what made everything else worthwhile. Love was what saved them all in the end.